Hello everybody. Today we're going to be going over some algebraic concepts known as solving equations. So let's put an example equation on the screen. 3x plus 3 equals 30. So essentially, with equations like this, x is a variable and we don't know what number it is, but it is a number. And that's what we're trying to find. This equation in words is basically saying that 3 times what number plus 3 is going to give us 30. And the way we do this is we look at our equation and we're going to try to isolate x so that only x is on this other side. So we want this term here to be alone, which means we need to get rid of this term and somehow. So if we get rid of this term, how are we going to get rid of a 3? Because think about it. If we have 3x plus, let's say, 0, 3x plus 0 is just 3x, and we got rid of the 3. So how do we make 0 from 3? We can subtract 3. So if we subtract 3 from the 3, then we'll be left with 3x. But since this is an equation, each section of the equation has to be balanced. So if we subtract 3 from one side, we also have to subtract 3 from the other side. So these 3's are going to cancel. But in this case, 30 minus 3 is 27. So now we've simplified the problem. It now says 3 times what number is 27? Obviously, you could know what number it is, but if you don't, what is the opposite of multiplication? That would be division. So essentially, you're multiplying the 3 times the number to equal 27. So if you divide them by both of those quantities by 3, then these 3's, 3 divided by 3 is just 1. And x is going to equal 27 over 3. 27 divided by 3 is 9, so x is going to equal 9. You can always go back and check your answer. 3 times 9 plus 3 equals 30. This is 27 plus 3 equals 30. And then 30 equals 30. So we know our answer is correct there. Let's move on to a different example. So we only saw adding. Now let's look at what we do when we subtract. 4x minus 9 equals 22. Sorry. 4x minus 9 equals 23. So we're subtracting 9 here. So to balance the equation out, we're going to add 9 on both sides. These 9's are going to cancel. And we're going to be left with 4x on this side, and then keep bringing them the equality sign. And then 23 plus 9, that is 32. Now, since we're multiplying by x, let's divide. We might as well do it all in one. These 4's are going to cancel, and then we're going to have 32 over 4. 32 over 4 is 8, so that means x is equal to 8 in this one. That's because 32 minus 9 is equal to 23. So it checks out. Now, let's dive into some more things with equations. So let's use the distributive property to solve this equation here. Wrong color. 3 times x minus 4 is equal to 2x minus 11. So we're dealing with a different type of equation. We have x on both sides, and we also have a number on both sides. So the thing to do is when we have 3 and then we have some value in parentheses, what we want to do is we want to distribute. So 3 times x And then 3 times negative 4. Make sure to keep the sign. So 3 times x is just 3x. 3 times negative 4 is just negative 12. Because a negative times a positive is a negative. And then let's just keep everything on the other side. 2x and then minus 11. So what you're going to want to do here is you're going to want to decide which side you want to subtract the x's from and which side you want to subtract the numbers from. So in this case, it's probably best that we move the 2x to the other side, because when we subtract it, we're left with only one x on the other side. So it's the fastest way to solve the problem. And something you can do is when you cancel these out, you can also cancel the other numbers out. So you have to do it one on each side. So we subtract 2x from both sides. So now we have to deal with the numbers, but we can't subtract the numbers from the same side. We have to do the other side. So if we add 12 on both sides, negative 12 plus 12 is 0. Oops. 0. So now we cancel out two things. Now we just have to simplify. 3x minus 2x is just x. X is equal to, well, negative 11 plus 12 is 1. So that's the answer there. If you want to plug it back in, we have 3 times negative 3 is equal to 2 minus 11. So negative 9 equals negative 9. So we solved it. Let's do some more practice with that specific. So we have 6x plus 8. Here's 6x plus 8 is equal to 7x minus 16. So as we said before, well, we don't really want to deal with negatives, so let's move this 6x to the other side. So we're going to subtract 6x, and then we subtracted from this left side. So let's get these numbers out of the way on this side. So in this case, let's add 16 to make that 0. Add 16. All right. And now we're going to look at our cancellations. So this cancels and this cancels. So now we have 8 plus 16, which is 24. That's going to equal 7 minus 6x is just x. So that means x equals 24 in this one. Let's go over some more topics. So let's say we have this equation. X over 4 is equal to 5. How can we solve this? Well, one thing we could do is cross multiply. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply this x by the 2 and this 5 by the 4 and place them on this side. So 5 times 4 is 20. We're going to make that equal x times 2 is just 2 x's. And now we can just solve our equation like normal. When we divide by 2 to get rid of the 2, x is going to equal 10. So that's the answer for that. Now, let's suppose that we have something like this. Let's say we have 5 times x plus 5 is equal to x times x plus 5. Well, the thing is we have multiplication, and whilst yes, we do have subtraction, or sorry, in this case addition. Just because we have addition doesn't mean we can do it, because it's inside of the parentheses. So we would have to distribute. However, if you see two of the same quantities on the other side, they will cancel most of the time. So if we divide this entire thing by this quantity, x plus 5, the x plus 5s are going to cancel out. So now we just are left with 5 is equal to x. So that's the solution right there. to that specific problem. Now, let's deal with squares. So you learned in arithmetic, or previous math courses, that a number squared, like 3 squared, is equal to 3 times 3. Or a cube, known as like 2 to the third, is equal to 2 times 2 times 2. So we're going to use that in solving equations. So let's say that x squared equals 16. So some number squared is going to equal 16. The way we find that out is we're going to take the square root on both sides. When we take the square root on both sides, what this is going to be doing is the square root of a number squared is itself. So it's going to cancel out the 2 and the root. So x is going to be left over. The square root of 16. The square root of 16 is going to equal positive or negative 4. The reason for this is because negative 4 times negative 4 is equal to 16, and 4 times 4 is also equal to 16. So you have to label those solutions. So x equals plus or minus 4. So this has two solutions. All right, let's try another one. Let's say we have x to the third equals 27. Let's take our cube roots on both sides, because exponentiation and roots are the opposites. This is going to cancel, and we're going to have x is going to be equal, the cube root of 27 is 3. So in this case, x equals 3. And the reason we don't say plus or minus is because whilst, yes, 3 times 3 times 3 equals 27, negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3 is equal to negative 27. Because this is just 9. 9 times negative 3 is 27. So that's how you break it down there. That's why it's only one answer for that one. So let's go into another case. Let's say that the square root of x is equal to 5. Well, we said that the opposite of squaring is rooting, but that means that the opposite of rooting is squaring. So if we square this entire thing, the root is going to cancel, and then we're just going to x equals 5 squared. 5 squared is equal to 25. So in this case, x equals 25. However, it's good to note that the square root of x cannot, in this case, square root of x has to be greater than or equal to 0. That's probably good to note. Whilst x squared equals to some value can produce a negative solution, the square root of x equal to some value cannot. Let's explore that. So let's say the square root of x equals negative 7. Well, let's just solve it. Just square both sides. The roots are going to cancel. X is going to equal, well, negative 7 to the second power is just 49. But when we plug this in, we have the square root of 49 is equal to negative 7. And this is wrong, because square roots can't produce negative values. So this equation has no solution. For this one. Now, let's move further. So let's say that we have an equation that includes a higher degree. Let's say x squared. So let's say we have 2 times x squared minus 1 is equal to 160. So there's multiple things we could do, but I do want you to notice that since we're multiplying a quantity by 2, and we also have a quantity on the other side divisible by 2, we could divide both by 2 and isolate this thing in parentheses. So x squared minus 1 is equal to 80. Now all we got to do is balance the equation. X squared is going to equal 81, and when we take the square root on both sides, x is going to equal plus or minus 9. So that's the answer for that one. Alright, next we have x squared is going to equal 5x minus 6. This one particularly is harder to solve than the other ones because, well, we have an x squared, an x, and a constant. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually move all of this to the other side and set it equal to 0. You'll see why in a moment. So we have x squared, we're going to subtract 5x, and we're going to add 6. And then that's going to be equal to 0. This is known as a quadratic. This is in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And when we can do that, we can reference this quadratic formula. Negative b plus or minus the square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. We can memorize that in multiple ways, obviously multiple mnemonics and songs for that sort of thing. But we can also factor it out too. But that is more of a Algebra 2 skill compared to if it was a Algebra 1 skill. But in this case, you can always factor in, or you can always put everything into the quadratic equation. You can only factor it sometimes. So let's just do the quadratic formula. So our a equals, well, the number in front of the x is just is an invisible 1. B is equal to negative 5. And then 6 is our c, because the c is our constant. And this is equal to 0, so we can use this. So negative b, negative 5 is just 5, plus or minus the square root. Well, negative 5 squared is just 25, minus 4 times a is 1, c is 6, and then we're going to put all over 2. A is 1, so 2 times 1 is 2. So now we have 5 plus or minus the square root of, this is just 24, and 25 minus 24 is 1. So so that we know that the square root of 1 is just 1. So 5 plus or minus 1 over 2. So let's find our two solutions. X is going to equal 5 plus 1 over 2. 5 plus 1 is 6. 6 over 2 is 3. And our x is going to equal 5 minus 1, which is 4, over 2, which is 2. So these are our two solutions. And if you see, if we plug them in, 4 is going to equal 20. Sorry, not 4, sorry. You see that for this one, we're going to have x equals 3. So we're going to have x squared minus 5x plus 6 equals 0. And if we replace it with 3, 9 minus 15 plus 6 equals 0. And 4 minus 10 plus 6 is also equal to 0. So we know that both of these solutions are correct. So that's how you solve equations in algebra. First step, I'll write it down. So the first step is to look for x squared or any higher power. You want to look for x squared or any higher power, and then this means that you move everything over and use the quadratic formula. And the second step is that if it only has one thing, how to balance through addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. And then if we can't do that quite yet, if there's parentheses, so if there's a parentheses, then distribute or divide out. So that's how you solve equations in Algebra 1. Obviously, there are more types of equations that are more advanced and require more advanced techniques. But for Algebra 1, that is going to be a very extensive list of how to solve equations, because it is a big part of algebra. So, just to recap, we have to balance equations. We have to balance equations. Then we have to use opposite operations: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, exponentiation, and square roots to solve. I hope you like this video, and goodbye.